So our story starts today in one of my favorite places on earth, a place where there is no greater juxtaposition of joy and agony, of frustration and exhilaration, and of graciousness and hostility. I'm talking about a Little League baseball field. So those who know, they know. So in this story, I'm the coach of a group of 12-year-old boys playing in a tournament, and we're in an elimination game. And that means that if we don't win this game, we go home, and this team doesn't play together again for the rest of their lives. And unfortunately, on the other side is a player who's viewed as the best pitcher in the tournament. And I can sense the fear and anxiety in my players' eyes before the game starts. But I know something that they don't. I had the first pick in the Little League baseball draft that year, and we'll call that great pitcher Timmy, and let's just say I refused to draft Timmy. And if you want to know why, it's because Timmy is a sore loser. He brings everyone down when things go wrong. If one thing goes against him in a game, he'll crash out and he'll bring the entire team down with him. And I knew we didn't want that as a part of our team. So fast forward to this game. The game starts pretty predictably. Timmy's on a heater. He strikes out our first three batters. And I watch our team walk back into the dugout and get ready to go on the field. And I said, guys, just be patient. Wait. So sure enough, Timmy comes up to bat in that first inning, and all I do is touch my right ear. And my catcher knows exactly what to do. He lines up a little bit outside, off the plate, but the pitcher hits his target. And even though the pitch wasn't over the plate, the umpire calls it a strike. And that was the start. Timmy slams his bat down in frustration and says, no way. The umpire politely says, son, step back in the box. All we do is two more to the right ear. Two pitches in the exact same location, called the exact same way, and in that moment, I knew we had already won the game. The score was still 0-0, and we weren't even out of the first inning. But I knew what was about to happen to Timmy. So sure enough, he heads back out on the mound in the next inning, and he can't find the strike zone. And then we hit a ball to him, and he fumbles it. And then the next inning, he comes up to bat again, and he strikes out again. And at that point, the other coach had no choice. He had to take his best player out of the game. In a game where his team's season was on the line, they had to try to survive without their best player. So my name is Jordan Floyd, and I am a recovering sore loser. I am the person who cried after missing a word in a spelling bee in the third grade and tried to blame the pronouncer, okay? I'm the person who played basketball in high school and verbally berated the refs every time they made a call against me. I'm the person that stormed out of the financial aid office of my dream school because they lost a piece of my financial aid application, which ultimately resulted in me not being able to attend that school. I'm the person who has held bitterness and resentment over employees that have left and started competitive companies. And I'm also the person who had the Little League board called on me because I verbally berated a 7-year-old and told him he was pathetic for missing a ground ball in a Little League baseball game. And that player was my son. Okay? So why are we talking about this? Because I believe that the world is full of sore losers, that I'm probably not the only one. And so I wanted to start by taking a look at some numbers that tell us a little bit of the mental makeup of what America and the world looks like right now. So here's what we know just as far as things that have changed in my lifetime. I'm 35 years old. I was born in 1990. And here are some quick numbers that have just changed in my lifetime alone. We've seen an 80% increase in the prevalence of depressive disorders in the US, a 55% increase in anxiety disorders worldwide. And in that same time frame, we've seen per capita at least a 300% increase in the number of licensed mental health care providers and at least a 70% increase in the use of prescription drugs to treat these conditions. Meanwhile, happiness ratings across the board have either stagnated or declined across all cultures despite undeniable improvements in standards of living and access to therapeutic resources. So maybe the question we need to be asking then is, maybe we don't have a supply problem. Maybe, just maybe, we have a methodology problem. And there's lots of self-help advice out there in this arena. I want to talk about two of the most common ones that you'll see in the world. I call these two opposing approaches the can't hurt me approach versus the don't hurt me approach, okay? So the can't hurt me approach would say that our response to losing should be nothing but fierce determination. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Whereas the don't hurt me approach would say that every loss is a wound that is stored inside our body, and there must be work to be done to overcome that wound that has been caused to us. One approach says that in response to loss, we have to emotionally dissociate, and the other says we have to emotionally surrender. And what I would say is neither of those approaches are helpful or sustainable across a lifespan where we know that losing is likely to be a constant. So I'm going to get straight to my point. I told you I think the world is full of sore losers. And I think they're masquerading typically in two different forms. One as the fierce competitor, and one as the helpless victim. But neither one knows how to respond to losing. And if I'm right, then your ability to respond to losing appropriately, to respond to losing well, is a huge competitive advantage in the world. And if I'm right, it's something that we all need to be able to examine within ourselves. And if I'm right, as parents, it's a non-negotiable. This is a skill that we have to be able to develop and train within our children so that they understand how to respond to setbacks. But there is a counter-argument to this approach. The great Vince Lombardi, Super Bowl winning coach of the Green Bay Packers, once said, "Show me a good loser, I'll show you a loser." That's right. So what he would say is that losing begets losing, okay? But what I would tell you is that argument is based off of some faulty assumptions and confirmation bias, and I hope to be able to dispel that for you guys over the next few minutes. So we need to start by defining our terms. I come from a speech and debate background, so in order to be able to have a conversation with anyone, we have to be speaking the same language, and that starts by defining our terms. So we're going to talk about this word losing for just a minute. Most people, when they hear losing, they think about a scoreboard, and certainly that can be true. But losing can look like a lot of different things, including some of the things that I put on the screen here. But let me tell you what losing is not. First, losing and failure are not the same thing. So losing is objective. It's any unfavorable outcome in any context. Failure is the feeling that we get sometimes in response to loss that leaves us feeling defeated and wanting to quit. So although failure may come after a loss, they are not the same thing. I want to address another word that's become increasingly common in the course of my lifetime, and that's trauma, okay? So trauma has had this wide-spreading definition over the course of my lifetime that now would really be defined as anything that overwhelms our bodies or our brain's ability to cope. And let's start by acknowledging that trauma is a real thing. So people that endure things like abuse or neglect or assault or witness such things, that has a profound impact on the brain and the body. However, there are lots of unfortunate events that happen in human life that are not trauma. Things that are related to human error, mistakes, or bad luck, those don't need to be attributed to trauma. In fact, giving unnecessary weight to those things only perpetuates our inability to overcome them. So, if we can agree on some of those definitions, I think we can agree on a couple things about losing. One, I said earlier, losing is any unfavorable outcome in any circumstance. So that means nobody wants to lose. So I hope that no one hears that you should leave here and try to lose more, because that is not what we're talking about. Losing is always an unfavorable outcome. But secondly, you should know that losing is inevitable and unavoidable. I guarantee you there is some part of your life where you feel like you're losing right now. That's a part of being human. And in fact, that's my next point, is that losing is essential. It's what makes us human. If we weren't losing at something, then we wouldn't feel anything. And we're going to talk about why that's important here in just a second. So I want to talk to you just a minute about some of the benefits of losing. Because I guarantee you there's something in a moment where you felt like losing was really painful and it was the end of the world, and yet maybe with some perspective of weeks, months, or years later, you were able to see that that was actually beneficial for you. Here are some things that I have personally found losing to be beneficial for. What losing does is it reveals where we put our hope, our faith, and our trust. Because in those moments of loss, we're forced to reconcile those things. And then, unfortunately, we put our faith, hope, and trust in a lot of what I would call false idols. Things like control, ego, security, and material things. And what happens when we lose is that we realize that those things can't hold the weight of our hope and our faith and our trust. And it allows us to realign those things. A couple other things that losing helps us with is that it humbles us. It reminds us that we're not the hottest thing since sliced bread, and we need some humility from time to time. And finally, losing moves us. Inertia is a powerful force, but sometimes we need the discomfort of a loss to move us out of the position that we're in. So I need memory tools just like everybody else does. We've talked about what a bad loser looks like. So what does actual good losing look like in practice? Well, losing often causes us to lose our focus. So in order to respond, we have to focus. So here's our memory tool. Number one, fear. So fear is the most powerful human emotion there is, and it drives a lot of our decision making. And so the first reflection we should have after a loss is, did I lose because I was afraid? Was I paralyzed and afraid to act, and therefore I suffered this loss? Or the next thing is that we need to take ownership of the situation. In order to be honest and be able to move forward from losing, we have to be able to name it and own it and not minimize it. To be able to say, I lost my job. I dropped the ball when the team needed me the most. That's the only way we can move forward. Next is the choices that we make. So we can always reflect after losing, and I think that's important. But what we want to specifically reflect on is, what choices did I make that ultimately helped me end up in this situation that I'm in this unfavorable outcome or unfavorable circumstance? And then, if given the same data and the same circumstances in the future, would I make a different decision? The next one is uncertainty. So Benjamin Franklin said there's no certainties in life except death and taxes, which to me both feel like losing, by the way, okay? But we need to be really comfortable with uncertainty, because uncertainty is a characteristic of human life. We know very little about what the future holds, and so we need to look at, are we truly afraid of something that's harmful, or are we just feeling uncertain in the moment? And if we're feeling uncertain, good. That means you're in touch with reality. And then this last one, which is something that I've used in my household before, is this idea of sitting in the suck, but don't sulk. And what do we mean by that? Is that allow yourself to feel the weight of a loss. Allow your brain a minute to process it. But we don't sulk, we don't throw hissy fits, we don't over-identify with the loss, and we remind ourselves that we are more than one negative outcome. So if we can lose well, I told you it's going to be a competitive advantage. So let's talk about what that looks like. In reality, if we can lose well, there's a lot of things that we don't have to worry near as much about. The first one is fear. It's something that I talked about a second ago, and it's an extremely powerful emotion. So if we can play the game of life with less fear, we can play freely. We can be ourselves, and we can unburden ourselves from fear, because we know we've lost before and we didn't die. It was okay, all right? The next thing it does is that it makes us more humble and authentic. People love being around people who are truly themselves and don't have to feel like they have to put on a mask or a face to be around others and pretend like life's going better than it truly is. We also don't sulk when things go wrong, because nobody likes to be around a sourpuss, right? So when things inevitably do go wrong and we respond favorably, that makes people want to spend a little more time with us too. And then the last thing is that it makes the wins sweeter. There's nothing worse than the feeling of, I'm afraid to lose, but I can't even enjoy the win whenever I win. If we reframe how we lose, then the wins become a lot more enjoyable. So I'm going to finish where I started, with the story of the Little League team. So I kind of foreshadowed this, but that Little League team that I coached did go on to win that game and then win the next game and win a championship, and that was really cool. Core memory for me. But what I didn't tell you is the day before that game, we had played the same two teams that we had to beat to win the tournament. We had played those two teams, and we lost both of those games, including one by mercy rule. That means we stopped the game early. You're losing too badly, okay? So what this team did, though, is that they sat in the suck, but they did not sulk. We focused, as we talked about before, for about 20 minutes, and then I sent those kids to the neighborhood pool. I told them to go be kids again. And I want the same thing for you. So things I want you to take away from this. I don't want you to let losing define you, but I also don't want you to let it surprise you. I don't want you to live in fear of losing. I want you to live in confidence that you can handle it, because it's coming. We've all agreed that it's inevitable. And for parents, we don't want to shield our children from losing. We want to expose them to it and allow it to shape them. And we want to teach them that it's not something they're going to be able to avoid, but it's something that they can learn from and become better humans, not in spite of their losses, but because of them. Thank you.